This is Trinity Storm and you are watching third part of What If Naruto Was Bastard Son of Minato. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Naruto walked up the stairs to take his place next to his squad because his match had ended and he was not going to fight another one at this point because they were only supposed to fight once to reduce the numbers to half of what they were now. Naruto could only chuckle as the various Chunin aspirants went out of their way to avoid him, because after what he did to Kiba, they were genuinely terrified of the guy. Most of them had grown up wanting to be shinobi and imagined grand adventures and fortunes in their futures, but Naruto's actions had just injected them all with a harsh dose of reality. Nobody expected Kiba to become a limbless torso, and seeing someone their own age not only capable, but willing to do that to someone did not bode well for many of them, who were seriously considering a new career path. Minato paused for a moment to ensure that Kiba was in good hands with the medic Nin before pressing the button to begin the next fight. But before he could press the button, several shinobi from other villages who had survived the Forest of Death raised their hands and forfeited their chances of progressing. Minato was surprised to see so many people quit like that, but after seeing Kiba become crippled like he had, it was no surprise. When those who had forfeited left the building to pack their belongings in their rooms and return home, Minato summoned one of his shinobi to go over the list of those still participating in this event. He noticed that the numbers were much lower than he had expected and paused for a moment because they were only 2 people over the limit that they desired for the third and final portion of the exam. So he did the most basic thing he could think of. He drew 4 names from a box to determine the 4 people who would fight with the rest of the people who passed this portion and would advance to the finals. Minato took the time to explain this to those who remained, as they needed to know, and then drew the names before they were displayed on the board. Lee vs. Gaara. Gaara saw his name on the board and simply grunted because it didn't matter to him whether he fought or not. However, this was the ideal time to slate his bloodlust because the voice in his head was whispering into the dark recesses of his mind, exacerbating his insomnia from a lack of years of sleep. So he raised 2 fingers to perform a jutsu and felt as the sand he controlled swirled around him and he vanished in the swirl. He reappeared as the sand swirled around in the center of the arena, then dispersed to reveal Gaara standing on the balcony, just as he had moments before. Lee pumped his fist in delight at the prospect of being able to demonstrate all of the skills he had worked so hard to master with his sensei. So he leapt from the balcony, landed on the ground, and quickly rose to his feet, assuming a fighting stance with one hand behind his back and one hand out with his fingers up in a "come get me" motion. "I'm overjoyed that I still have the opportunity to fight in this part of the exam," Lee said, smiling. He expected Gaara to respond, but instead he gave the young bushy-browed man a glare that could freeze even ice. They remained like this for a while, and Naruto and the others who remained began to speculate on which of the 2 combatants would make the first move. To no one's surprise, Lee charged forward to attempt to land the first blow of the match. He approached Gaara, jumped into the air, and delivered a spinning kick towards Gaara's face, but Gaara's sand blocked the kick without him moving an inch from his starting position or even losing the glare on his face. Lee saw the sand transform into a hand that tried to engulf him, but he was too quick for it and jumped back just in time. Lee had been taught by his sensei from an early age to analyze his opponent for a weakness, but he was unable to see one because the sand seemed to be a factor that he would have to overcome before he could inflict any sort of damage on his opponent. With no other options, he continued his attacks, but each one was deflected by Gaara's sand, which shifted around, preventing Lee's kicks or punches from connecting. A strand of sand tried to attack him from behind, but Lee was able to cut through it with a kunai, preventing it from doing more than blowing sand in his face. He attempted to use the kunai to cut through the sand that was protecting Gaara, but the plan failed because the sand was thicker around him, so the kunai didn't cut through, forcing Lee to dodge yet again as it tried to engulf him. Lee had to expertly dodge sand attacks from all around him, but his rigorous training paid off because he was able to do so without breaking a sweat. He then threw some shuriken to see if that was a viable option for attacking his opponent, but his efforts were thwarted once more by Gaara's damn sand. Lee was becoming concerned about the fact that not only were none of his attacks working against Gaara, but he had yet to move from his starting position since the match began. When he looked closely, he noticed that the giant gourd on Gaara's back was spewing more sand into the ground. But what caught his eye was that it wasn't pooling around his feet like it should have because it was hitting the ground, but it wasn't. Lee felt the ground rumble, and everything went to hell in a handbasket from there. Lee attempted to jump out of the way as multiple tendrils of sand emerged from the ground, but despite being able to dodge a number of them, he ultimately failed and was grabbed by the foot by one of them. Lee was then slammed into the wall hard, knocking the wind out of him due to the intensity of the pain. Before he could catch his breath, his entire body was pummeled by sand fists before being slammed into the ground near Gaara with enough force to crack the ground into a spider web-like pattern. Lee attempted to get out of this position, but Gaara had not finished because he had dropped a massive mass of solid sand onto his back with enough force to break his spine. Lee screamed in agony as his lower body went completely numb. The damage he had sustained had rendered him paralyzed from the waist down. Gaara began to smirk as he finally moved enough to lift his hand up and engulf Lee in his sand, crushing him in a bloody manner, but before he could do so, he was bombarded with water jutsu by several Jonin to soften his sand and extract Lee so he didn't die. "Lee!" exclaimed the boy's sensei Might Guy as he saw his prized student in such a predicament, and it hurt him to see Lee in such a state. "What exactly did he do to you? Did I make you proud, sensei?" Lee asked as he coughed up blood that had pooled in his mouth. "Lee," Guy reassured as he held his student's hand, "you will be fine. We just need to get you to the hospital and the doctors will fix you up." "I highly doubt they can," said Naruto, who appeared next to them both out of nowhere, making Guy flinch because it was unexpected. Guy could only say, "What?" because there was nothing else he could say in this situation. "I'm saying that the damage done to his spine is too extensive to be healed in any hospital," Naruto explained as he examined the young man to see how badly Gaara had injured him. "How do you know this?" Guy asked, slightly irritated that this strange young man had appeared out of nowhere and said that his student's chances of recovery were practically nil. "You may have heard about me through rumors," Naruto simply shrugged. "My name is Naruto, and I am known as the Surgeon of Death throughout the elemental countries." Guy was not only shocked, but also completely white in the face when he heard this information. He'd heard about Naruto from various rumors that had circulated in the village, but he assumed that the person given such a moniker would be much older than Naruto. But, based on what he had heard, Naruto clearly knew more about Lee's critical condition than he could, despite the fact that he was not a medic in any sense. "Can you heal my student?" Guy asked, hopeful, because he wanted his student to become a great shinobi in the future, and as he was right now, he couldn't. "Actually, I can," Naruto said with a smile. While he was cold to his enemies and those he swore vengeance against, he was not cold to those he helped in the medical field. On the contrary, he felt good inside because he knew his mother would have loved to see him help others the way he did. "That is why I am here right now, to offer you my services in order to heal the man. Please help my student." Guy pleaded, bowed his head to the ground and pleaded for Naruto's help. Naruto was embarrassed by the spectacle because he had not anticipated it. Most people assumed he did what he did for money, so there was no need for Guy to beg him right now. "Okay," Naruto said with a sweat drop, "there's no need to beg like that. I'll help your student, but the medical procedure will cost a little. Whatever the cost, I'll gladly pay it." Guy exclaimed as tears welled up in his eyes. Naruto took out his price book and saw the various things he would have to heal in order to fix Lee and return him to pristine condition. This is why many of his operations became so expensive, because the prices began to pile on and the gross sum was greater than if the patient only had one problem. So, once the price was calculated, he wrote it on a receipt and handed it to Guy to see for himself. Guy's eyes widened at the high price because he didn't have that much on him or in his account at the time. I'm guessing from your reaction that you don't have the money that this will all cost, Naruto sighed, but you seem like the kind of guy who truly cares about his student, so if you will sign an agreement to pay me the price in full by the end of the exams, then I will operate immediately and he will be up and about good as new after a few days' rest. Yes, Guy said as he wiped his tears away. Naruto took out a scroll that he had multiple copies of, which stated that if the money was not paid in full, fees would be added, and organs would be harvested if no attempt at payment was made, in order to make his money back in some way. It may appear gruesome, but those organs would benefit others, so in the grand scheme of things, it was a chaotic neutral issue. Naruto wrote down the amount owed, which Guy signed without hesitation, and then Naruto summoned the door to his operating room, lifted Lee in his arms, and entered it to operate on Lee. Soon after he left, a number of shinobi appeared to prepare the arena for the next fight between the final two genin chosen whose names were listed on the board. Neji vs. Hinata. It's come to this, Hinata. Our long-awaited game. One without the Hyuga main family preventing me from showing you my power, Neji thought to himself, while Hinata was enraged at seeing her cousin's hatred for her in his eyes. Hinata Hyuga was a haughty woman if ever there was one. She was, after all, from the Hyuga clan, and at least half of them were haughty due to their dojutsu. Hinata was the clan head Hiyashi's daughter, and she had been taught her entire life that she was better than most people, and those lessons had stuck with her throughout her childhood and into her adolescence. She was kidnapped as a child by a Kumo shinobi posing as an ambassador and saved by a Konoha shinobi. Something in her mind snapped that day, and she vowed never to feel that helplessness again in her life, so she trained her mind and body to be cruel, just like many of the other Hyuga main branch members. She remembered fighting her younger sister Hanabi for the right to bear the title of clan heiress, and she had fun beating that little bitch to the ground so she couldn't get back up. She then placed the cage bird seal on her sister's head and laughed as she saw her sister twitch in pain on the ground. Neji had been there that day since the entire family had been forced to witness the event and had discovered that his cousin was truly evil down to the soul. The failed Hinata kidnapping ended with Neji's father being sacrificed to Kumo in order to obtain a Hyuga, but the seal on his head killed him, so they didn't have a living one. He had nothing but rage for his uncle and cousin since that day, because Hiyashi was supposed to be the one sent to Kumo, being the clan head and all, but Neji's father was his twin and looked exactly like him, so he was sent instead. Because of Hiyashi's failure to protect his own daughter, Neji was now fatherless and faced a life of essentially slavery for the rest of his life with the activation of the seal on his head. But now the gods had seen fit to give him a chance to finally vent his rage at his cousin, and he would be damned if he didn't take advantage of it. We really shouldn't have to fight like this, Neji, Hinata said arrogantly as she entered her gentle fist stance, which mirrored Neji's. I'm going to be sorry in the end. I just know it, Neji thought as the proctor signaled the start of the match and saw Neji move in to dominate the match as quickly as possible. Kuretsuchi and Haku stood on the balcony, watching the match with sharp keen eyes that never missed a single action performed by either combatant. Neji was the aggressor, striking with the intent of crippling his slightly younger, but far more enraged cousin. Hinata, for her part, was demonstrating her agility in a fight by avoiding strikes aimed at key parts of her body, demonstrating that despite her arrogance, she had taken her training seriously. When she wasn't dodging Neji's blows, Hinata tried to counter with her own, and she was actually holding her ground against him. This irritated her because, in her mind, she should have won at his point because Neji was a branch member of the family and thus had far less training, but here he was matching her blow for blow with skills that he should not have. But, while Hinata grew tired of it all, Neji's hatred for his cousin kept him going. So he eventually powered through her attacks and started inflicting damage. Naruto appeared through his door as they fought, having finished Lee's surgery. The process, while unconventional in execution, did not take long because he knew exactly what he was doing. This was not his first or even his last time doing something like this. So he returned to his friend's side and nodded to Guy to let him know Lee was fine. Guy thanked him with a smile and a thumbs up. So, Now that he was free of distractions, he looked down to see Neji kicking Hinata's arrogant ass, and he had to admit that he had not anticipated this chain of events. He's pretty badly damaged her arms, Naruto thought to himself as he saw Neji deliver an uppercut to the girl's face before delivering another blow that sent her flying back onto the ground. Hinata was practically enraged at this point, and people could hear her growling. It is said that the Hyuga clan's gentle fist taijutsu focuses on shutting down chakra points of their targets using the Byakugan. It has the power to see those chakra points and shut them down with each strike using the chakra in their hands. By hitting the specific points all over the body, a person's chakra network cannot function, or if the Hyuga wishes to be cruel, damage a person's internal organs without actually piercing them. With his dominance becoming clearer by the second, Neji decided to go for the kill, striking Hinata in the chest near the heart. The girl exclaimed in surprise and pain before stumbling back, clutching her chest and staring at Neji, astounded that he had reached such a point in her body. She knew the chakra points of the body almost as well as Neji did, and she also knew that if one of them was hit, it could cause serious damage to the heart muscles, if not heart failure, if left untreated. Before Hinata could finish her sentence, Neji was on her again, hitting her in the stomach, making the girl cough up blood and causing her more pain. Neji thought now was the time to end this once and for all, but he collapsed in agony as the seal on his head was activated. Hinata had a smug expression on her face as her hands formed the hand signal to activate the seal, and as she saw her cousin on the ground crying out in pain from the agony shooting directly into his brain, she could only imagine what horrific punishment her father would inflict on Neji for attempting to strike her down like that. Who can say? Maybe he'd end up like her pitiful uncle and be shipped off to die, but that was a question for later, and Neji's pain was her entertainment for the time being. Naruto was disgusted by this because she was essentially cheating. The seal on Neji's head was given to her as a handicap. Neji had been on the verge of victory when Hinata cheated, leaving him unable to finish her off, and what irritated him even more was that no one watching was doing anything to help the poor lad. This was another reason he despised the arrogance of clans in villages, because they used the "clan matters" excuse to get away with nonsense like this. Naruto despised Hinata's attitude toward those he considered beneath her. The fact that the little bitch of a princess had used her family's style to force him to his knees and then stepped on his head before slamming it to the ground so that he bowed to her only added to his hatred for her. While he wished to deal with the bitch personally, as he had done with Kiba, he paused for a moment before grinning because this situation provided the perfect opportunity to do what he wanted without consequences to himself. As a result, he bit his finger and pointed the bloody digit at Neji. He fired the blood at the tip like a flintlock pistol bullet, but without the bang caused by igniting gunpowder. The blood struck Neji in the side of the head, but he was already in excruciating pain, so any additional blood from this new source went undetected. The blood seeped into Neji's pores and quickly began to infect the lad from within. Naruto felt this and waited until he had complete control before acting. He forced Neji's body to rise up, still screaming in pain because there was nothing he could do about the seal at the time, and pounced on Hinata, pounding her face with Neji's fists as the instrument of both their hatred for the girl. Many people were surprised to see Neji still attacking while screaming in pain, but after the shock of the situation passed, several Jonin appeared and pulled Neji off of Hinata before Medic Nin arrived to take her away for immediate medical attention. After the match, Naruto clicked his fingers, causing the blood he infused into Neji's body to go dormant, and he lost control of it because it morphed into the blood type of the person it was inside of. He discovered he could do it, and it came in handy from time to time, as it did now. This caused Neji to pass out and collapse in exhaustion because his body had been pushed beyond its limits by everything that had happened. He was also picked up by a medic Nin in order to receive medical attention for himself. Minato congratulated the remaining genin and informed them that the event finals would be held in 1 month. He then had them all draw a number from a box to determine the finals matches, and they proceeded as such. Naruto vs. Gaara. Sakura vs. Kuretsuchi. Ino vs. Haku. Temari vs. Shikamaru. Tenten vs Shino. Naruto vs Neji. Kankuro vs Choji. Once the matches were set up and official, Naruto met up with his group and walked with them back to the village's hotel so they could collect their belongings and leave. But before he joined them on the walk back, he summoned Guy and asked him to hold for a moment while he went into his operating room to collect Lee. Guy grabbed the sleeping lad and told Naruto that he would make sure Lee took it easy for the next few days and that the money was paid in full by the deadline before disappearing in a swirl of leaves. Naruto then smiled as he finally joined his group, who had been glaring at each other the entire time they were walking back, with neither of them saying anything. Naruto had tried to start a conversation to break the awkward silence, but the moment he opened his mouth to say anything, he felt the killing intent directed at him, and he knew he had to simply keep his mouth shut if he wanted to survive unscathed. He was a surgeon capable of gruesome maiming and killing, but he also knew when to fear women in situations like this. They eventually arrived at the hotel, where Naruto separated from the girls because he could tell they were still mad at each other and he didn't want to be in their crosshairs. He left a simple note explaining that he would meet them at the front gate at 8 p.m. to take them back home, so they would have a proper departure time. So Naruto set out to find something to eat because he had been eating dried meat for several days and needed a proper meal to leave this village on. So he looked for a place to eat and eventually settled on a barbecue restaurant that he had seen in his youth but had never been able to visit because he and his mother never had the money to pay for it. He entered and sat at a table before a woman approached him and handed him a menu. He placed his order and waited a few moments for her to return with it. The meat was raw, but there was a mini grill built into the table where he could cook it. So he did exactly that and ate his meal in peace. He left a nice tip and paid for the meal before leaving to find something to do until they left the village. He found a quiet place to sit for a spell and write messages for various people, which he summoned crows to deliver for him as soon as possible because timing was critical in this matter. He smiled as the last one left with the message he had written, then sighed relieved that he could finally relax for a few hours before setting out. However, the moment he became comfortable, his stomach exploded, and he moved just in time to avoid a swipe of a clawed hand that sliced large chunks out of the tree he had been resting under. Naruto jumped to his feet as he rolled out of the way of the unexpected attack and got a good look at the person who attacked him out of nowhere. She had long, spiky brown hair that was untamed, vertical slit-like pupils, and elongated canine teeth and nails. She had fang-like markings on her cheeks, as well as markings over her eyes and a dark purple lipstick on her lips. She wore the standard Konoha shinobi outfit of a flak jacket over a black suit with the sleeves rolled up and bandages around her legs. "I'm going to guess you're an Inuzuka based on your physical appearance," sighed Naruto, who recognized the appearance of those who belonged to that particular clan. The woman did not respond to his assumptions. Instead, she stood there growling in rage. "And judging from your rage towards me, I am gonna guess that you are Kiba's mother," said Naruto as he got his cane ready for the fight that was most likely to happen. He had paralyzed the woman's son beyond medical treatment, so it was reasonable to assume she was here to do to him what he had done to Kiba. "You will be held accountable for what you did to my son," she snarled. "Before we proceed with..." "Well, whatever it is you intend to try," Naruto said, pulling out a medium-sized vial of his blood and tossing it up and down in his hand. "Can I at least get your name?" "Sure, why not?" The woman retorted angrily, "My name is Sume Inuzuka, remember that as I rip your body to fucking shreds." "Not one to gloat or kill without a good reason," Naruto replied, "but are you sure you want to go down this road? You have the option of simply leaving here. I have no quarrel with you, and as such, I don't want to hurt you." "You seem to think I'm alone in this," Sume said with a sinister grin, howling so loudly that people miles away could hear her. Within seconds, Naruto was surrounded by at least 7/8 of the entire Inuzuka clan, all of whom had come to support Sume in her vengeful attack on Naruto. Those who were not present were either too young or too old, or were on missions outside of the village and thus unable to assist Sume in her vengeance. If you hurt one of our family members, you have to deal with the rest of us. Well shit, Naruto thought to himself, having not seen this coming after what he had done to Kiba. He had never had to fight off an entire clan before, and while he was confident in his abilities, he did not want to fight them in this manner because he was not one to fight those who had not irritated him. Even now, these people had gathered because he had crippled one of their own, which he could understand because he would have done the same. But before he could do anything to calm the crowd down, they all attacked at the same time. This caused him to have a flashback to when he was 7 and was nearly killed by a pack of wolves. As he saw them charging him, he looked at Sume, who was filled with murderous rage, and fully activated his haki. The effect was immediate, with their animalistic instincts amplifying the effects. From the outside, it would appear that they were simply afraid of one person, but their instincts revealed a shadowy figure of a monster that towered over all of them in size and was willing to kill them if necessary. Sume, her family, and their canine companions broke out in cold sweat and looked down in terror. They couldn't even look Naruto in the eyes while he used this ability because it was so powerful. Naruto walked over to where Sume was kneeling and placed his cane under her chin to raise it so she could look at him. Sume looked him in the eyes, expecting the same type of murderous rage she felt towards him, but what she saw completely surprised her. In his eyes, there was no anger or hatred, only understanding. "I know why you did what you did," Naruto said solemnly, "because any woman worth her salt would do the same thing for their child," he added, "but I don't wish to harm you because I have no quarrel with you." "Then why did you cripple my child?" Sume demanded. It took all of her willpower to even muster the courage to growl, and it affected her body, causing her eyes to tear up. "I did it for vengeance," Naruto stated simply, his face emotionless given the gravity of the situation. "What have my kin ever done to you?" "Your clan has done nothing to me," Naruto shook his head, "but your son has, and that is why I did what I did." "What could my son have possibly done to deserve such a crippling blow delivered to him in such a gruesome manner?" "Let me explain it to you," Naruto said, his face flushed with rage as memories of what Kiba had done to him came to the forefront of his mind. "I was born in this village, with nothing more than the name my mother gave me and the bare minimum of anything else, but I was happy because I had a mother who loved me with all her heart. Times were tough for us because we were so low class in the village that even if we died, no one would know or even care. I tried to make friends, but no one wanted me as a friend." "That's not true," Sume said softly. She couldn't believe her own son, whom she had raised, could do such a thing to another human being. But she couldn't deny that her son had grown arrogant over the years, and despite her best efforts to suppress it, it persisted to this day. "Oh, but it is," Naruto said, holding up his hand and removing his glove. Sume noticed a massive scar down the center of his hand that appeared to be a stab wound scar, but judging by the size and irregularities of the shape, it had to be multiple stabs because the end bits were in all directions. "The day that solidified my hatred for them was exactly 1 year after my mother's death, when they found me crying over my mother's grave and took turns beating me black and blue, all the while laughing about how worthless I was, and that Kami herself agreed and had taken my mother away from me as a sign to simply do the woeful thing." "I understand," Sume said, distraught that she had failed to recognize her son's monstrous side in time to stop it. "Can you, however, heal him?" "I refuse," Naruto said, "because I did this to ensure that for the rest of his life he will be reminded of his greatest mistake, which was hurting me for his sick amusement. So now he gets to waste away as the useless nothing that he has always claimed I was, without a means to recover or even pass on his genetics, until one day he will beg for someone to put him out of his misery, and when Sume his own mother don't have the." Naruto then kicked Sume onto her back, causing her daughter Hana, who was nearby, to growl a little before suffering the same fate as Sume, with tears in her eyes. "Now I want to know one thing before I leave here today," Naruto said as he reapplied his glove to cover up his scar. He then took out a small vial of blood, crushed it in his hand, and felt the liquid flow down his hand onto the cane, just as it had when he was fighting Kiba. "I may not appear to be it, with my reputation for killing that earned me the title Surgeon of Death casting doubt on my claims, but I would prefer a peaceful resolution to my problems if presented with one. I am a doctor and I prefer to heal over killing. I do not seek out enemies to slaughter, but I will not stand idly by as my friends and loved ones suffer and will do everything in my power to protect them from harm. Why are you telling me this? Sume asked, weakly attempting to move Naruto's foot off her chest, but whatever force had brought her entire clan to their knees had sapped much of her strength as well, and she lacked the strength to move it. Because I think ahead because it comes with the territory, Naruto explained, and I have a feeling that if I simply walked away, you would seek to harm my own family in the future if I was ever lucky enough to have one, so I would rather nip this in the bud here and now. But he used the blood on his cane and formed into a spear tip and held it mere centimeters away from her throat. Sume looked at him once more and saw that same shadowy figure her and the rest of her clan had seen when they attacked them. This time it was poised to attack like it was going to swallow her whole in a manner that would leave nothing if it did. So I will ask you this here and now once and only once. Will you let this vendetta go and forgive me for seeking my just vengeance? Or must I bloody my hands with your clan here and now going down the lines of succession until I find someone who will? Sume stared at him with utter shock that seeped deep into her soul because she knew he was telling the truth when he said he would kill them one by one if necessary. She could respect that in a sick, twisted way because the boy had come from nothing and had overcome everything life had to throw at him in order to obtain the balls and threaten an entire clan known for their ferocity. She weighed the options presented to her and carefully considered them. She knew that whatever power this kid had to subdue her clan in this manner would have to end eventually because all powers required energy from somewhere, and his would eventually run out. So, with that said, she had no idea how long it would take or how many of her family members would die before then. Her greatest fear was that their clan would end up like the Uchiha, with only a few members who would then be tasked with repopulating the clan to greater numbers. While she would always be angry at the man who had crippled her son, she was the clan leader and had to consider the situation as a whole, not just one person. So, in the end, she simply nodded her head to indicate that she accepted his offer. Naruto retracted the blood from his cane, feeling it seep into the pores on his arm. He extended his hand to assist her in getting to her feet. Once she arrived, he began to walk away from the clan, who all backed away from him because any man who could force an entire clan to submit in that manner was not someone to fuck with. Many had heard what Naruto had said to Sume about his actions towards Kiba, and most, if not all, had agreed that if they had been in the same situation, they would have done the same thing if given the chance. Sume saw Naruto fade away into the distance, and as she did, a single thought entered her mind. She would question her son about his behavior as a child. She'd do it in such a way that he couldn't lie to her, and if Naruto was telling the truth, she'd let this vendetta go because his actions were not only legal, given that they were part of the Chunin exams and genin were known to die in them, but she'd done it as well. She mentally prepared for the conversation she was going to have with her son, all the while knowing in the back of her mind that Naruto was telling the truth. Naruto checked his watch and saw that, despite the random ambush that resulted in his victory, not much time had passed. So he started walking around, trying to find something to do with his time until he met up with the rest of his group and left the village with them. But no matter where he went, he couldn't find anything worth his time, so he just kept walking. He had assumed that he would be bored until they all left when he heard a voice call out his name from the distance. He saw a man who was clearly a Hyuga, as Naruto could tell by his attire and his eyes. He noticed the man holding a folder, which made Naruto wonder what it was. "Hold on a second, young man," the man said as he caught up to Naruto. He paused for a moment to catch his breath after sprinting to find Naruto once he learned of his whereabouts. "Are you the infamous surgeon of death?" "That I am," Naruto stated as he faced the man squarely. He noticed no hide or bandana on his brow, indicating that he was a main branch member. "Sir, what can I do for you?" "My daughter was recently injured and requires immediate medical attention," the man explained. "The head doctor at the hospital told me that only someone of Tsunade's skill would be able to help her because the damage was too extensive." The problem is that Tsunade is not in the village and it would take too long for her to come back and help her. I heard you were in the village and had various members of my family seek you out so I could find you. Well, I'm happy to help if you're willing to pay my fee, Naruto said, and I'm assuming what you have there are her medical charts so that I can look over them and see exactly what needs to be done to help her. That's what they are, the man said as he handed them to Naruto. While he despised having to pay what he assumed would be far higher prices for medical aid than he was used to paying in the Konoha hospital. However, the surgeon of death had an incredible track record in the medical field, so swallowing his pride was an easy pill to swallow. May I ask your name? Naruto asked as he took the file to examine it. My name is Hiyashi Hyuga, Hiyashi said arrogantly, as if knowing his name was a privilege for someone like Naruto. And it is my daughter Hinata who requires medical attention. Oh, Naruto said, looking over the file he was given. Neji had apparently done far more damage than he had imagined possible with just his hands and could see why someone of his medical skill was required to repair her. As a result, the cheater requires assistance. Excuse me, said Hiyashi in a slightly pissed tone. He didn't like hearing his daughter insulted like Naruto had just done. I called your daughter a cheater, my good sir, Naruto said as he handed the file back to him, having seen everything he needed to see. How dare you? Exclaimed Hiyashi, enraged. Do you know to whom you're speaking? The father of a cheater, Naruto smirked, I know who you are. I am a Hyuga, and you will treat me with respect. So what if you're a Hyuga? Naruto questioned, raising an eyebrow. I'm not from this village, and I don't care if you're from a clan. We all have the same organs and weaknesses, and while I will admit that your eyes can see what mine can't, I'm a doctor, and I know how to do what you do without them. You're not special in my book. You filthy commoner. Yelled Hiyashi, his face turning red with rage because this brat had insulted his entire clan. And yet I am a filthy commoner you spent so long looking for to help your cheating daughter, Naruto chuckled. My daughter is not, as you claim, a cheater. She fought her own cousin in the Chunin exams and nearly lost. Before he could win, she used a seal that I hear was put on him years ago to subdue him. That Sura is called a rigged fight, and as many people know that is called cheating, so your daughter is a cheater. Enough, Hiyashi said through clenched teeth as the conversation became heated. Are you going to help my daughter or not? Oh, I'll help her, Naruto said with a wave of his hand. It's just that she's a cheater, and I wanted you to know that. Keep your opinions to yourself, Hiyashi said, taking a deep breath to relax. Noted, Naruto said with a frown, but before I go to the hospital to help your daughter, there is something you should know. The damage done to your daughter's organs is beyond repair and requires new ones to replace them. Now, while most people who come to me for an organ transplant wait for a bit while it gets the proper one they need so that the operation can be completed, your daughter does not have that kind of time. So you have to make a difficult decision here. Hiyashi took it all in stride and growled at the added insult at the end. He considered what Naruto said carefully, and his eyes widened as he realized he had the ideal person to sacrifice in order for his daughter to live. Please go to the hospital, Hiyashi said firmly, and I'll get you what you need. Some family, Naruto thought to himself as Hiyashi dashed off to find out who he was going to get. You can feel the love within it, Naruto said as he walked towards the hospital, where he was met by a few branch members who were there to protect Hinata's room while she awaited surgery. Hiyashi had informed them that Naruto was on his way to assist Hinata. He entered the room, sat in a chair in the corner, took out a journal, and began scribbling in it. Hinata was fast asleep because she was conserving her energy, so she was unaware of the additional presence. Hiyashi soon arrived with Neji, who was bound and gagged and struggling feebly to break free from his shackles. Is this how your family works? Inquired Naruto, frowning. You sacrifice the one to beat your daughter in order to wipe away the shame of her defeat? I brought you what you needed, Hiyashi yelled angrily as he pushed Neji forward. Neji landed on his stomach and began to growl in anger at Naruto because he would not go quietly and would fight like a man possessed the moment he was free of these bindings. "Please heal my daughter now." "Alright," Naruto said as he pulled out 2 different receipts. "Now, since this young man is going to die, I'd like to keep the organs that aren't needed so that I can transplant them into others who will need them in the future. If you agree to that, you'll get a discount. Otherwise, you pay full price." "Do whatever you want to the boy," Hiashi snarled, "but I demand his eyes back, and that's a non-negotiable." "Fine," Naruto shrugged, "since I don't particularly care for them. I do better with my own, thank you." "You dare to make fun of our dojutsu? Your dojutsu is fine against others, but I am able to slice your arms off from a distance, which makes it a moot point because you can't get close enough to do any real damage to me. But we are not here to discuss what-ifs, we are here to heal your daughter. Now I want payment as soon as I return with her, which you have my word as a doctor that I will heal her and return her safely." Naruto then took out a needle and stabbed Neji in a pressure point to numb his body so he wouldn't fight back. He summoned his door, took Hinata, walked her through it, and placed her on the operating table. He then walked back out and grabbed Neji and walked back into his operating room, but not before turning his head to glare at the man who would kill his nephew just to save the life of his monster of a daughter. He then shut the door, and it vanished behind him. Once inside, he injected Hinata and Neji with a sleeping drug. He then performed surgery on Hinata. He had lied when he said she needed transplants because all of the damage he had done to her could be healed, it just took time. However, with the assistance of shadow clones, he was able to cut the time down to a fraction because they all worked on separate organs. When he was finished, he reassembled her and turned off the room. When he was put back together, he smirked and pulled out a container, which he then opened. Inside was a small syringe filled with a gray liquid, which he injected into Hinata. This was a virus that was designed to be undetectable and slow-growing. What it would do over time, which if his tests and calculations were correct, would be that she would go blind within the next year. Not only that, but her muscles would begin to atrophy, causing her to become a weak heiress and be booted from her ostensibly prized position of power because she would lack the strength to maintain it. She could still become pregnant, but because her body would weaken over the next year, she would die in childbirth if she even attempted it. As a result, the child had the opportunity to avoid learning her mother's arrogance because she would not be alive to teach it to her daughter. After finishing with Hinata, he walked over to Neji, who he had placed in a chair, and injected him with adrenaline to reawaken him. Neji jerked awake and began wildly swinging his arms around in rage. Naruto opened his palm for a split second before closing it, grabbing Neji's arms with his wires and immobilizing him. "Please calm down," Naruto said simply. "I won't let you kill me so that arrogant bitch can live." He screamed with all his might. "I'm not going to kill you," Naruto stated simply, raising an eyebrow. "Bullshit!" exclaimed Neji, not believing it. "I heard what you said to Hiashi." "Yet I already healed Hinata," Naruto said, pointing to her unconscious form, "and I did it without harvesting your organs. So then, why am I here?" Neji inquired, his eyes still filled with rage. "You don't remember me, do you?" Naruto asked, shaking his head. "I can't say I do," Neji admitted. Naruto said nothing else, but he removed his scarred hand's glove and held it up for Neji to see with his own eyes. Neji was taken aback by it because it reminded him of Naruto. He was there that day not to harm the poor boy like the others, but because it was his duty to protect Hinata as a branch member and she was a main. He had stood there watching as they repeatedly stabbed him in the hand. He had to leave with the group when they did, but he had left some bandages for Naruto, who was crying and bleeding over his own mother's grave at the time. "I can tell by your eyes," Naruto observed, "that you remember me. You were literally the only person in this entire village, other than my mother, to help me in some way, shape or form. To you, it may seem insignificant, but to me, it meant the world because no one else gave a damn about me. So, what do you intend to do with me? Neji, who was no longer afraid of Naruto because the man was no longer hostile to him, inquired. I intend to repay you for what you've done, Naruto said as he retracted the wires. Neji felt them loosen from his arms and rubbed them because they itched a lot. But all I did was give you some bandages, Neji said, puzzled. I don't see why you would help me like this. It's not that, Naruto laughed. You see, I have a vendetta against those who have hurt me all my childhood, including your cousin, and I had plans in the works to get said vengeance against them, but you did it for me when it came to your cousin, so it is only fair that I repay you for bearing the full force of the event's repercussions. So, how do you intend to assist me? As you may have heard, you are all but dead to the clan because they believe I am going to chop you up to save her life, but that is not going to happen. Instead, I am going to give you a fresh start, similar to the one I had when I left this village to seek a life elsewhere. But what about the seal on my head? Neji wondered, knowing he'd never be free with it on his head. Can you get rid of it? Not by normal means, said Naruto with a smirk. What do you mean by that? Asked Neji, who was even more perplexed than before. What I'm about to tell you will remain between us, Naruto said, looking at Neji with a look that promised pain if he told his soul about it. Neji comprehended and simply nodded. I have the ability to clone your body, but it will only be your body because seals are not genetic. Once fully formed, I can transfer you into it, fully free from the seal on your head. However, while I am doing so, I will make a few alterations so that you can hide your identity, such as different natural hair color and pupils in your eyes while still being able to use your Byakugan. And how am I to know you're telling me the truth about all of this? Neji wondered, still not fully believing what Naruto had said. I understand that trust must be earned, Naruto sighed, so I'll tell you something I've never told anyone else. Not my closest friends, not even my girlfriend. I'll trust you with my secret if you'll trust me enough to help you live a life worth living. What is this secret of yours? Neji inquired, genuinely curious as to what he could be hiding from so many people. I am the bastard son of Minato Namikaze, Naruto growled, because the man was no longer his father after everything he had done to him. Neji looked at him, completely taken aback by what he had heard. But, how? Was all Neji could say because his mind was trying to process it. How could their Hokage's son have been treated so poorly? But he couldn't say anything else because Naruto had stabbed him with a drug to put him to sleep yet again. Naruto pushed open the secret door he had and entered it once he was out of it. Multiple tanks of various sizes were housed within the room. The smaller ones were cloning individual organs to be transplanted into the person for whom they were created, whereas the larger ones, of which there were only 3, were cloning entire people. He stripped Neji naked and placed him in one of the pods, where his genetics would be cloned in the machine next to it. Naruto turned on the machine and saw his genetic makeup. He punched in a few things to change his appearance, but there was no need to change him otherwise. He had taken Neji's eyes before putting him in the pod because Hiyashi wanted them. After closing the secret door, he picked up Hinata and walked her out of the room, returning her to her hospital bed in Konoha. He waited there for a bit until Hiyashi showed up, where Naruto handed him a vial with Neji's eyes. Hiyashi gave him the money that was owed and once paid in full Naruto saw that it was near the time he had set for their departure. So he went out and met his teammates, who then went through his door so he could take them home to prepare for the final portion of the exams. After a day, Naruto had decided to use the day before he headed to the Kan residence, since he had sent a message to them that he would come tomorrow, to seek out a plant he had been meaning to find yet never had the chance to do so since he had so much on his plate for the past several months. He reasoned that now was the ideal time to do so because Haku was still not in the mood to talk for reasons he didn't understand. Fortunately for him, Zabuza had provided that piece of information shortly before he left to find the plants he was looking for. It turned out that Haku and Kuretsuchi had gotten into a heated argument over the fact that Kuretsuchi was apparently in love with him because he had saved her life in the past, a fact that made Naruto face-palm himself because he hadn't seen the obvious signs and made him feel like an idiot for not seeing the very clear signs. She called Haku out on stealing her man, which sparked a heated argument, with Haku bragging about having slept with him, and things escalated from there. Now the two of them had a bet going on that whoever beat the other in the exams would be his girlfriend, and they agreed not to talk to him about it to ensure there was no cheating. Apparently, that rule did not apply to Zabuza because Haku had gone straight to his place to stay for the month and told him everything. Naruto groaned, wondering when he became known as a prize between two women. He wanted to talk Haku out of it, but Zabuza had lost the color in his face when he told Naruto not to do it. Apparently Haku was far more stubborn when it came to what she deemed as serious matters and would use Senbon to make people get the point as painfully as possible. So he decided to run this errand instead of risking his health. He had been walking in what seemed like circles for the past few hours, and the map he had did not help at all in the matter. He sighed and paused for a moment to consider what he should do right now. He was jolted out of his reverie when he was forced to dodge multiple shuriken thrown his way. "Sweet merciful Kami," Naruto said as he prepared for the fight ahead, "can't I just go anywhere these days without being attacked in some way?" "Leave now," said a voice from which Naruto couldn't tell the direction. "You are trespassing on land that is not yours." "I am," Naruto replied, returning his gaze to his map. "To be honest, I am completely lost here. Where exactly am I? This map is not helping me." "You are near Taki's land," said the voice, which Naruto recognized as female, "and if you don't leave now, I will kill you where you stand." Taki, Naruto thought to himself, "At least I'm in the right place." Right location for what? This is ridiculous, Naruto sighed. "Could you please show yourself? I'm not here to attack you, and I feel stupid yelling at what are essentially trees." "Fine," the woman said, "but I want you to know that if you try anything, I will kill you right there." If I had a Ryo for every time I heard that threat, Naruto muttered to himself. When he heard a rustle of leaves behind him, he turned around to see who he was talking to. The woman was a petite, androgynous, tan-skinned kunoichi with an orange clip in her short, layered mint green hair, which matched her orange eyes. Her costume was made up of a short sleeveless white midriff shirt with fishnet armor underneath, long white armlets, and fishnet shorts with a short white apron skirt over it. Her forehead protector was worn on her right arm, and she also carried a red-wrapped cylindrical object on her back. "Well, hello there," Naruto said, trying to ease the hostile tension she felt towards him. "My name is Naruto, and may I inquire as to what yours might be?" "My name is Fu," the newly named Fu explained, "and if you are a threat to the village, I will kill you." "There is no need for such hostility," Naruto said as he raised his hands in surrender. He could understand a guard doing their job to protect their home, so he was not offended by threats of murder directed at him. "I had no idea there was even a village out here, so I'm not attempting to invade or attack it." "Then why are you out here in the first place?" Fu asked, her tone implying that she didn't believe him. "I'm looking for a plant that grows in this area," Naruto stated simply. "A plant?" Fu asked, puzzled. "You came all the way out here to the middle of the forest for just a plant?" "Yeah," Naruto said as he took out the book from which he learned about the plant and began flipping through the pages to find the one he was looking for. "I'm a doctor, and this plant will help me in my research." "You're a doctor?" Fu inquired, softening her stance. For some reason, she began to believe Naruto was not a threat, and the demon sealed within her was also whispering the same thing. "Yes," Naruto replied, "and you being here might actually help me because I have no idea where the hell I am, and the map I brought along is of no help." "Have you ever seen these plants before?" Naruto then moved forward in an unthreatening manner because he did not want her to attack him. He showed her the picture he wanted to show her and saw Fu's eyes light up with recognition. "I have," Fu said, nodding, "but why would you want those?" "They are highly toxic." "That's why I want them," Naruto explained before meeting Fu's accusing gaze, "and no, I'm not going to use it to poison someone, so put your mind at ease." Then what could be the reason for them? I'm trying to make powerful antitoxins, Naruto explained, pulling out a personal journal containing all of the information he had on the subject. He showed it to Fu to prove that he was telling the truth, and while she didn't understand half of what was written because she wasn't a medic, she saw that he was telling the truth and making antitoxins. And the way it works is that I need to build a base before I can build from there, and I want these plants because they are one of the most poisonous plants around and will make a good base, so can you help me find them? Sure, Fu said as she started leading the way towards the plants. She knew Naruto would not attack her because she felt no hostility from him, and to be honest, she was grateful for the human interaction. She'd been forced to live in the woods for years, guarding the village from attack, and hadn't had much opportunity to interact with people other than the occasional nin who tried to infiltrate the village. She had a friend named Shibuki in the past, but he had just abandoned her out of nowhere, and it had broken her heart that her only friend had done so. So she was relieved to spend some time with someone who was not hostile to her. It took them about 30 minutes to get to where the plants grew, which was a marshy area near a cave. Naruto had to wear thick gloves to handle things like this because the poison could enter through skin contact alone. He took several samples and placed them in a container, which he then sealed for later use. They then returned to the location where Naruto first met Fu. I thank you for your assistance, Naruto said with a smile, and I was wondering if there was anything I could do to help you in return? Huh? Said Fu, surprised that he said that. I was taught that you should help those who help you, Naruto explained, and since you helped me find these plants that I was having difficulty finding, I'd like to offer something to help you in return, so is there anything I can do to help you? Well, Fu said, rubbing the back of her head and smiling slightly in embarrassment because her request seemed a little silly, if you wouldn't mind staying and talking with me for a while? You are one of the only people I have talked to in years. So a bout of conversation is what you wish, Naruto smiled, that I can do quite easily, but since it is rare for you to have such a thing, allow me to make this a better experience for you. Wait right here. I promise I will be back in about 10 minutes, you have my word on that. Naruto then summoned a door to his operating room, through which he walked. This surprised Fu because summoning a door in that manner was unusual to say the least. However, the door vanished into thin air just as quickly as it appeared. Fu was sad because it reminded her of her only friend leaving that day with the promise to return later, only to never return. But she'd give Naruto the benefit of the doubt because he said he'd be there in 10 minutes. So she waited 10 minutes, but he had still not returned, which made Fu even sadder because she felt she had been lied to for the second time in her life. She felt as tears began to form in her eyes since she feared that she would forever be alone in these woods, stuck remaining the guard dog of a village that hated her for what she had sealed within her. After 20 minutes had gone by from the time of his departure, she was just about to head home when the door reappeared. Naruto then came through with a table in hand, while several clones of himself came with chairs and a tea set that was fancy in design. Sorry for the wait, said Naruto apologetically. I moved my tea set from my house to my office and forgot where I put it. I nearly tore up my house before I remembered where it was. What is all of this? Fu asked, surprised that he had brought all of this just to talk to her. I've discovered that some of the best conversations are had over a cup of tea, Naruto said as his shadow clones vanished after setting the table. It had a tea set with a hot plate heating up the kettle in a fancy tin that Naruto opened to reveal was full of cookies. Fu's mouth watered when she saw them because she hadn't had a cookie in years and had no idea how much she craved one until she saw them. Naruto gestured for her to sit and pushed the tin for her to take a cookie at her own leisure. And Fu had to admit that she was happy for the first time in a long time as she took one of the cookies offered and bit into it. She stopped after one bite since it was far more delicious than she had expected. Do you like the cookies? Asked Naruto with a smile as he picked up match and struck it to light it up. He then lit it on the hot plate and turned on the kettle to bring the water to a boil. He then spooned some tea leaves into his 2 teacups. They're amazing, Fu said as she took another after finishing the first. That they are, Naruto said with a smile. I got them from a bakery in Spring Country. They are a bit pricey, but they are completely worth it in my book. But while you are in a good mood, I have a quick question for you. Why do you live out here of all places? Fu stopped eating her cookie when Naruto had asked that, since she feared answering that question. She had always been told most of her life that Jinchuriki were hated throughout the world and treated far worse than how she was here with the isolation. Now here was a man who had listened to her request of staying and talking to her, and she feared that he would hate her if he knew the truth about her. You don't have to answer that, said Naruto, since he had thought about it for a minute and recognized the scenario. You are a Jinchuriki, aren't you? Fu was speechless that he had figured it out from her lack of answering and feared that he would just up and leave. Don't worry, Naruto said as he waved his hand to calm her down. I'm not going to start hating you just because of the demon sealed within you. I judge people based on their actions, not their burdens. Oh, Fu exclaimed, taking a deep breath of relief. The water had boiled by this point, so Naruto poured it into the cups to mix with the tea leaves. Naruto and Fu talked for a long time, which they both enjoyed because they had so much in common. They'd both been loners for a long time, but while Naruto's life had improved over time, Fu was still confined to her post on the outskirts of town. Fu explained how she had a friend named Shibuki long ago, but he had just abandoned her. Naruto felt sorry for her because he had been in the same situation as her, with a lack of friends and hatred directed at him for reasons he didn't fully comprehend. Fu had begun to cry at this point because the pain of that day had never left her, and she had no form of counseling or person to help her get over her grief. Naruto had cheered her up though in the end by wiping the tears from her eyes and gave her a hug. She reciprocated it and hugged back hard. Naruto understood that everyone needed at least one friend, and he held out his hand and offered to be that one that she needed. As he offered and she accepted, she smiled. But their sweet but happy moment was ruined when a scythe on a chain appeared out of nowhere and slammed into the table, destroying not only it but also the tea set and the cookies. Naruto and Fu looked to see just who the hell had ruined their good time. Standing there were two Akatsuki members, which Naruto easily recognized from the red cloud black cloaks. One of them had slicked back medium-length gray hair and distinctive purple eyes, while the majority of his chest was exposed as he drew back his weapon and slung it over his shoulder. The second man was a very tall tan-skinned man with long dark brown hair. His eyes had an unusual coloring, green irises, no pupils and red sclera. Naruto had done his homework after the Akatsuki attempted to recruit him, and he knew who these people were. Hidan, Kakuzu. Both considered immortal in their own way. Oh fuck, Naruto sighed in frustration as he braced himself for the impending fight. The question was why they were here. Couldn't he just have a few moments of peace?
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.